For more on the meeting in Muskoka, I'm joined live now by CTV political commentator Scott Reid. Good morning, Scott. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am not in Muskoka, unfortunately.
No, me neither. But we know a lot of people will be over the next couple of days. So do you expect anything to actually be accomplished in these meetings?
Well, I don't know how much will be accomplished in terms of concrete deliverables coming out of it, but I think it's a really consequential meeting. And, it's very unusual, just as an example, for the Prime Minister to invite himself to the Council of Federation, which is when all the premiers coming together. Usually, that's the last place the Prime Minister wants to be, because typically those meetings are a gripe session about the federal government, and it ends with a long communique demanding money in one sort or another from the federal government. Yet, the Prime Minister wants to be there. Why? Donald Trump, trade, tariffs, and that looming August 1st deadline. So I do think it's going to be an important meeting, because we're going to be talking about how do we try to secure some kind of deal by August 1st with the Americans, and just as much, we'll be talking about how do we manage a world in which we don't get a deal on August 1st? What's the plan B? And what will Canada, all its jurisdictions, do to sort of come together to protect our economy in that event?
But I mean, the clock is ticking till August 1st, right? Like, I feel like we've seen a lot of these meetings where there's a lot of talk, a lot of good ideas brought forward, but not a lot of concrete action. Like, are you expecting to see maybe some action after the Prime Minister meets with the premiers?
No, not specifically. What I'll be watching for, to be honest with you, is whether or not the consensus that has existed over the course of the past number of months, where oddly, very atypically, you've got all the provinces working together and in concert with the federal government, because we have this external threat of this trade war with the United States. Will that consensus hold firm this week? Or will we, as that deadline looms and some of the pressures and tensions that are inherent there, will we start to see some of that relationship break down a little bit? Will we see oil-producing provinces start to talk out against, say, Premier of British Columbia, who has been, resistant to the idea of a pipeline that would get you to the Pacific Tidewater? So I'll be watching to see how much agreement they can maintain, even in the face of all these tensions.
Okay, so the Prime Minister meeting tomorrow, but today we know Indigenous leaders will be meeting with premiers. After what we saw last week when Indigenous leaders were meeting with the Prime Minister and the federal government, do you think that maybe the premiers will learn something from what they saw last week in terms of how to speak with Indigenous leaders and actually make them feel like they're being heard and included?
Look, I think it was a tough meeting last week, because a lot of Indigenous leaders and communities are not on the same page. The sense of urgency that's gripped the rest of the country, the sense of urgency that's gripped our leaders federally and provincially to build rapidly so that we can get energy infrastructure, other large projects in place to try to protect our economy, to give ourselves more options in a world where we can no longer rely so obviously on the United States. I don't know that we're in 100% alignment. So I think that today's conversations, there may be a lot of polite effort to agree, but fundamentally, the disagreement over this agenda is going to remain. And I think that is probably going to be the defining characteristic. It may not be quite as tense as last week, but the issue set is firm. Not all Indian leaders, not all Indigenous leaders and bands are in agreement with this push to build, baby, build.
Yeah. And just lastly, also, obviously, tariffs are the main focus of these meetings. That's what we've heard so far. But I mean, there's other things that potentially could be discussed, right? Other big issues that our province and other provinces and territories across the country are facing, such as healthcare. Do you expect to hear anything else being discussed, or is this really just on that August 1st deadline and trying to avoid more tariffs?
I think Trump, trade, and tariffs are agenda items 1, 2, and 3 for this meeting. But you cannot have a meeting of Canada's premiers where they don't obviously talk about healthcare. It's the largest share of their budget. It's a major pressure that they all face. So I do think you'll see some time preserved over the course of the meetings and some space reserved in their final communique for that other set of issues, probably most prominently dedicated to healthcare. But let's be honest, like so much else about our world these days, it's going to be dominated by talk of Donald Trump.
Okay, CTV political commentator Scott Reid joining us live this morning. Scott, thanks for your time.